as long as I'm a husband, I have a calling. As long as I'm a father, I have a calling. And I could go through the whole thing. As long as I'm a brother, as long as I'm an uncle, I have a calling. And to me, and this is what Nehemiah pointed out, to me, that is the big picture.
Right. Welcome to Living Out 180, a podcast from 180 Church where we talk about faith, leadership, and everyday life. We'd like to welcome you to the podcast today. I'm your host, Kendall Terry, and I'm here with my co-host, Brad Bryant.
Hello, everyone. It is a great day.
And we are going to be talking about a continuation of last week's Go to Battle series. Last week was fear. And I noticed in putting this one together, this week is discouragement, but we still talk about fear.
Yes. Yes. That's what helps you build content.
That's right.
Is having some stuff built in.
That's right. So we're going to be talking about discouragement, and I sound way too happy to be talking about discouragement today.
That's what we have to be, though.
Because
otherwise, it's going to go bad.
That's right.
We'll just be discouraged.
And nobody would want to listen to that. And so in looking at this whole series idea, we didn't really set this up last week. Maybe it was okay. But so you've got this whole series that we're in as a church, and it's called Go to Battle. The church, if you come to church, you're a couple weeks ahead of where the podcast is. But give a little bit of background of like what we kind of hit on it, but we didn't really talk about it. So what's the starting point for this idea of the Go to Battle series, and then we're going to be breaking down all these different elements.
Right. What I wanted to do was talk about, and I always want to do this, obviously, but really in this time of year, in this season, I wanted to hit things that I felt would connect with a wide variety of people. And specifically, a lot of what we're dealing with are specific to Christians. This is probably too much information, but summer is usually not a big evangelistic time. It's usually your core people. These are the people that come to church on a regular basis. And so I try to develop messages that apply more to Christ followers rather than being evangelistic. We'll do some of that in the fall. So this was where that came from, is just thinking about what does everybody deal with. I came across this book years and years and years ago, and I'd forgotten about it. And it's called Slaying the Giants by David Jeremiah. I'd encourage anybody to read it. And if you read it, you're going to see a lot of the outline that I use for each of these topics. Yeah. What I usually do is take the outlines from the book. I've got the teaching book, and I've got the actual book that he wrote. And I will take those outlines and just kind of make it mine and share it from my perspective, because here's what we know. And again, we're talking about discouragement today, is that every person deals with all of these things. First week, we talked about fear. This week, we talk about discouragement. Everybody deals with this. Mm-hmm. Everybody has moments. You talked about we're a little upbeat to talk about discouragement, but isn't that interesting that you talk to somebody who is regularly upbeat, and if they trust you and you know them really well, they can even explain to you that sometimes their being upbeat is fighting that discouragement, because discouragement is something that, in my opinion, it doesn't just pop up. There are factors that we'll talk about today, fear being one of those. There are factors that will cause discouragement to kind of sneak up on you. Yeah. And that is why it's really important. But, the very thing that we did at the beginning was define discouragement, was very eye-opening.
Yeah. Because you defined it as discouragement as the absence of courage.
Sure.
Which, if you break the word apart, that makes complete sense. Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And how many times are we in a situation, and in reality, the situation calls for courage, and that's not what we feel in the moment.
And so that's what, in the beginning of this particular message, I just started looking at the scriptures where this Greek word was translated, and there were several ways it was translated. One was don't lose heart. One was don't give up. And then there's some that just says don't be discouraged. And so taking that idea, the question I ask, and I would ask today as we start the podcast, is have you ever had those times where you just wanted to throw in the towel? That's the idea.
Right.
Do you have those times when you're throwing the towel? Because when you want to throw in the towel, it's lack of courage. a lot of people may not know where the term throw in the towel comes from. When I was younger, I was dumb enough to go to a boxing school. And that's where I learned exactly what that meant.
Yeah.
When your coach felt like you weren't going to make it.
Right. You were done.
You were done. They would throw in the towel. And what that meant was you gave up.
Right.
It's over. And I think in boxing, it's even worse because that means your coach just gave up on you. So that's, that we don't need to go there today. But that is the idea. If anybody can think of a time, it may be now, I hope not, but if they can think of a time where they were ready to give up, or, as Scripture says in 2 Corinthians 4, lose heart and just get to that point where, I just don't think I want to do this anymore. And I'm not talking about that heavy part of thinking about harming yourself. If that's the case, I hope you're going to talk with somebody and getting some help.
100%.
But just that moment of, I think this is too much for me, and everybody around you thinks you should continue. Like this is a God thing for you, but yet your heart is beginning to faint.
Yeah,
that is lack of courage. That's discouragement.
And I think in my own personal life, when I look back at different moments that I would look at saying, I was definitely discouraged here.
Mm-hmm.
Many of those times on the edge of that moment is also a turning point if you can figure out how to get out of that.
Sure.
Now, sometimes we get out of that on our own. Sometimes we get out of that with help from others. But there's definitely those times where you go, okay, I don't know how to X, or I don't know what else to do. Mm-hmm. And then hopefully you either get there, like I said, on your own or with help of, okay, what can you do here? And that's part of what we're going to be talking about today. But those are times where you have that self-check of, am I going to keep going? Am I going to figure this out? Am I going to change professions? Am I going
right?
Something is going to change because of this moment. Mm-hmm. And so it's not always a bad thing to be in that moment. And that's actually the Bible message that we were relating to with Nehemiah. Mm-hmm. Nehemiah had that.
Right.
Like there was definitely, when you read Nehemiah, you see that discouragement, and we're going to talk about that. But it was in that moment that he kind of came to these like realizations of, okay, this is what we're going to do. Yeah. And that like we are going to build this wall.
Mm-hmm. And so what I do think is interesting also, and as we go through this, especially this first part, you don't even have to, and this is what I want to kind of share with people, everything that I do and everything that you and I do is always from a Christian perspective. It's always from a biblical perspective. But the interesting part about this particular one, and I think all of them fit, but on this particular one, we're just using Scripture to back up what we already know. Mm-hmm. And I think people need to understand that. The things we're going to talk about that I believe brings on discouragement, and in my notes I said the things that makes us vulnerable to discouragement. You don't have to have the Bible to agree with us.
Right.
It's very simple to look at it and goes, yes,
correct.
I've experienced that.
And I can think of one instance in particular. I was at Lee. I was in college, and I was doing well. Mm-hmm. Okay, but there was a lot going on, and there was a major exam in a class that I was taking. I had prepared, went in, took the test, and for whatever reason, in that moment, I just did not answer. It was an essay exam, and
there wasn't an essay.
I wrote an essay. When I got the score back, I realized that the professor apparently asked a different question. Yeah.
You were answering the voices in your head, not the words on the paper.
And it was one of those classes that there was not a lot of grades in this class. Like the essay exams were the majority of what the grade was going to come from. And it was like, oh, this is now an uphill battle. And it was in that moment that you kind of, you get very frustrated with yourself. You get discouraged because you start going, what else could I have done? How else could I have prepared? What, all this other stuff is going on. I had this project I was working on. I had this test. I had this paper. I don't know how to change any of this in that moment. And I think it gets to that very first thing that you were talking about in it, the message of fatigue makes us very vulnerable to discouragement. Right. Whenever I got that grade, I was discouraged, but part of the moment was also because I was tired.
That's it.
I was tired. I had done everything I knew to do. I was up late. I was up early. I was studying. Life was still happening, and it was like I don't even know. It's that I don't know what I should have done different. And
you become a teenager. I don't know.
And it's in that moment that then you have to do some checks. And I had to go and throw a pity party for a minute, and I had to get upset, and I had to say the teacher was dumb, and all the emotional, normal human reactions, especially as a college student. Blame it on everybody else. Take no ownership. And then it was, it was one of those of, okay, let's go talk to the professor. Mm-hmm. And it was through that conversation, and it was the gut check of, the professor wasn't saying, okay, I'll let you out or whatever. It was, you've still got the rest of the class to work hard. You've got to figure this out. This isn't a me thing. The professor was like, this isn't my fault. And he went through the question. I just blew it. I just did not answer the question the way I should have answered the question. And I learned in that moment, and it was a gut check of, okay, now I know something that I didn't know before. How am I going to make it to where this doesn't happen again? Or am I going to walk away from this and go, I'm going to go drop this class, this guy's stupid, whatever. And it turned into a thing of me evaluating some things about my life and saying, okay, what am I going to do? And for me, it was old, saying of, you pick yourself up by your bootstraps and you go, okay, I'm going to figure this out.
Or you take your ball and go home.
Yeah.
There's your choice.
And I had a desire in that moment to actually succeed.
Yeah.
On top of the discouragement, I still had a desire to succeed and say, no, I do want to figure this out. And because of that, I was able to kind of get to that point. It took some time. It wasn't just like a instant, okay, I'm great. But it was fatigue in that moment that I was like, I was just tired.
And most people will admit that they're tired. You ask somebody, hey, are you discouraged? You may, they may, mumble around a little bit and then just get to the point, no, I'm just tired.
Yeah.
I'm just tired. But understanding that fatigue is a symptom or a contributing factor of discouragement. It's one of those things that will drag us. I've noticed this in my life, and I talked about it a lot, that as I get more tired, I have to be more intentional about courage. So as and we can talk about this physically, as I get more physically tired, I have to be more conscious of putting in the effort because my body is saying, I just really don't want to. I don't really want to keep pushing. And so it's important to keep that at bay, if you will. And again, that could be rest. I've told people before, one of the things that refreshes me is Sunday morning church services.
Yeah.
If that's not your case, you're in the wrong church or you're not paying attention to the right stuff. That's just my opinion. If Sunday morning is not encouraging, then make some adjustments. Chances are everybody that's at your church is trying to do their very best, and you may just have a bad attitude. I don't know. Yeah. But that's my thing. That's one of those things. We talk about pressure relievers. I believe worship is one of those things that for me personally, it gives me some spiritual energy just by worshiping. But if you're not careful and you don't pay attention to that, then it'll begin to drag on you. And frustration is typically what comes in next.
Yeah.
There's just, if you talk about Nehemiah 4, the workers said, there's just too much. There's just too much.
Been there.
And I have stood there and looked and said, what are we supposed to do with this?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't too long ago, probably a year or so ago, both of my kids as married adults have lived in our house at some point.
Yeah.
We have a basement. That is a mistake to have family live with you when you have a basement, because I still have things in my basement from our family members.
That's right.
So a couple of years ago, I told them, I said, here's what we're doing. I'm getting a dumpster and I'm going to throw everything away. If you want something, you can come help. And everybody showed up. It was really cool.
That's right.
As they were pointing fingers over who had the most stuff in the basement.
Yeah.
But I remember opening the garage door in the basement with the big dumpster sitting right outside of it and just looking, going, where do we start?
Yeah.
And in the moment, we hadn't even begun yet. And in the moment, I was like, I was frustrated before I took a step into the basement.
Yeah.
And that's silly and it's funny until it's life. And you look at your to-do list, you look at your kid's schedule, you look at your schedule, you look at all the demands that everybody places on you, and all of a sudden you're like, this is just too much. I don't know that I can do this.
Yeah. I know for me personally, a couple years ago, my parents inherited my mom's childhood home, which was great. And they were right at retirement at the time, so it was just one of those nice things because they needed a house for retirement. They had inherited this house. And then the reality set in of the whole thing needed to be gutted.
Yeah.
And so my dad called me. It started from, simple things like, hey, we've had to get the HVAC system.
Put up some paint.
Well, we had to, the HVAC, it didn't have air conditioning. It was an older home, didn't have air conditioning. So they put an HVAC system in it. And then it was, when we were doing this, we noticed that some of the electrical needed to be redone. And I remember Dad calls me on the phone one day and he's like, I think we're going to have to gut it. Mm-hmm. Like the amount of work to redo the electrical at this point, like we can't redo all of this without really just taking it down to the studs. And it's like, okay, now this is a bigger project, but okay. And so for me, in my ignorance, okay, and youthful ignorance, maybe
I
don't know. I go, well, Dad, if you can there was a guy that he was like, I can pay. It was a family member, and he'll come in, he'll gut everything, get it all done to studs. And I was like, Dad, if you can get it down to studs and get the wiring done, I can come in. My father-in-law was volunteering my father-in-law, and he did. I was like, we can come in, we'll get it re-sheet rocked.
Yeah.
It'll look better than it ever did. We'll get the flooring in, like everything that needs done. And it was like, that sounds great. Dad pays this guy, they gut it. And I mean, I'm getting pictures of it being gutted. We showed up, we had a week. And in my head, now this isn't a big house, okay? But in my head, we can go in and we can completely re-sheet rock this thing and get it finished in a week.
Like it.
I'm like, we're going to work 12-hour days. Now, this is me volunteering my father-in-law.
You had some courage.
And I remember we get there, everything had been delivered. Like my father-in-law had, priced out everything. All the sheetrock had already been delivered, the mud, the tape, everything's there. We're ready to go. We roll in. We hadn't actually been on the property, We roll in, and I remember opening the door, and you talk about fatigue
so
and
much
frustration rubble. And, but there was so much, as Nehemiah, there was so much rubble. Like there was so much, like the thing had been gutted and everything, like supposedly everything had been gotten rid of, except for all the stuff that was left still.
Yeah.
And it's like there was an old stove sitting in the middle of the kitchen they had moved it away from the wall. They could, but they didn't know
was it their problem?
Stove. It was still sitting there in the middle of the kitchen. And so I remember just all like we're going, and I'm like, we have a week and we can't even get started.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then my father-in-law, the very first thing he goes, what kind of doors are they going to put on these rooms?
Right.
Just normal doors. He said, no, because this opening isn't right. He was able to stand there and my grandmother's house didn't have doors. They had the sliding
just
things, and
openings,
but they didn't have doors that shut. He goes, you need to ask your dad, are they going to put doors? I said, I know they're going to put doors in. What are you talking about? And so like he was like, well, before we can even sheetrock this, we have to readjust the opening of every door in the house. And, so it was like, there was so much. And I had my son with me, he, for the first half of the week, all he did was carry stuff out to the dumpster.
Right.
And we're trying to clean up enough room to be able to start sheetrock while somebody else is finishing doors. And my wife's uncle was there trying to figure out closets, and there was all kinds of stuff that that was going on. And it was about halfway through the week, so fatigue is starting to set in because my body is not used to that kind of work.
Yep.
I'll be honest with you, I don't have that kind of job.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you get to about halfway in the week and you're loading yourself up on Tylenol and everything else, to like aspirin, whatever, Aleve, get through. Like, I got to get these things moving again. And I'm sitting here looking at my father-in-law and my wife's uncle going, they're older than I am. I don't even know how they're moving right now. And so you've got the fatigue, you've got the frustration of there's still so much stuff. And it was about halfway through the week that my father-in-law sat down with me and he goes, what are you going to be happy with us getting done?
Because, if I can interject, just interrupt, because frustration, fatigue, those are all, but the thing that I believe it causes discouragement more than anything is failure.
Right.
And so your father-in-law was saying, I need to know what a win is.
Yes.
That's what he was 100%. Asking, right?
Yes. And so the frustration for me in that moment, the discouragement for me in that moment was, in my head, the win was
finishing
this thing being finished. And he's like, okay, like, hopefully paint is not on your agenda.
Right.
And let's be honest about where we're going to get, like, which parts of the upstairs are you saying need to be finished before we leave? Not painted, but just finished. And it was tough because he was very calm. I was not as calm. I wish I could have been more calm in the moment, because for me, it was the only answer was failure then.
Right.
And so what should have been this easy win of we're there working and volunteering the stuff to try to help my parents be able to retire. And my dad today goes, we would never have even gotten close with this thing had you guys not come in. Like, what you guys did. And it actually ended up being us coming back several times, right?
Yep.
So it got down to me looking at my father-in-law and saying, okay, let's talk about the things that I can't do. Because we, meaning you, because you have all the expertise, we've got to get that done before this week. Because I knew my father-in-law probably wasn't coming back. It's
not
we
that
don't
he
live
wouldn't.
near.
It just wasn't.
Right.
That's not the way it works.
Right. He was giving us a week, and so it was okay. So it was determined that they have, there was one bathroom back where the bedrooms were. It was like, I don't know how to do, like, we need that to be as done as possible.
Yeah.
A tub had to be installed. There were decisions that had to be made.
Yep.
And so he was like, okay, we can do that. And we had to go through what we could and couldn't do.
Yeah.
But
that's the thing. What would a win look like?
Right.
That was the question.
And it was rough for me because at the end of the week, I was still discouraged because I still felt like it was failure.
Right.
Because we did not check all the boxes.
And
it took multiple trips back to do what I could do, because there were things that I was able to do that, I had learned, I'd picked up enough. I'm like, it's not going to be done to a contractor level, but it'll be nice. And so between my wife and I and my son on other trips, and my daughters even went with us on some trips, and we painted and we did a lot of things and got the house to where my parents were able to move in a lot quicker than what they were able to move in. But the fatigue and the frustration and the failure were so hard to combat. Those things were definitely encouraging the discouragement. And it was tough to go, now I've got to drive home. My body's hurting. I'm tired. And I'm fighting this idea that we didn't get done what I felt like we needed to get done.
I think we understand it in sports more than we understand it in life, and that is the need for a win. And I think that's what your father-in-law in wisdom was doing. In sports, we schedule wins. We look at and say, who can we beat? Like, I need to know who we can beat. We need to schedule them early, or we need to schedule them in the middle.
That's right.
Because we're going to need a win. And I've heard coaches talk about that on a regular basis. Because if you continue to experience fatigue, frustration, and you continue to experience failure, it just gets you to a point where there's just not any more courage. And I don't know if these are progressional, but I do know that after all those first three we talked about, fatigue, frustration, failure, fear becomes very real in those moments, because all of the things I fear, we're never going to get a win.
Right.
I fear that it's always going to be too much. I fear I'm not going to recover mentally, spiritually, emotionally, whatever it is that has just took the life out of you. And so that is that thing that probably intensifies discouragement. I mean, you think about takes your courage more, is seeing something. And, I've used the illustration before. We have a pool at the house, and it's been interesting watching our grandkids go through the growth of scared to death of water. I think I'll be okay in water. I can do anything in water.
Yeah.
And I've watched them. And so, the 9-year-old, the 6-year-old boys, now they're like fish, and they'll do anything. That the water does not bother them at all. Well, my almost 2-year-old granddaughter, they took her to rescue swimming training, which is really good.
Yeah.
But what we've learned from rescue swim training is that she's no longer afraid of the water. We used to take her in and sit her in, and if it got on her face, she was like, okay, I'm ready to get out.
That's right.
Well, now that here it is, now that the fear has been taken away, she has all the courage, and it's not good.
Yeah.
I'll just be honest. We have to keep an eye on her every minute of every day. If she's outside, somebody has a hold of her because she's going to the water.
Yeah.
And that's the idea, that fear will just absolutely remove all of your courage. I remember with the boys, if they were afraid of the water, there was zero courage. Now that they're not afraid, they'll jump off the highest rock.
That's right.
They'll, my oldest grandson, now his greatest joy is showing us that he can swim underwater, the thing he was most afraid of, all the way from one side to the other. Really proud of him. But you go back to those times when they were afraid, there was zero courage. And so I think that's the thing we want our listeners to think about today is, what is it you fear the most? And I would say that's where you have the least amount of courage.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be very important to you to find a way to overcome that fear, to get the courage back.
Right.
Because it's not as much as just let's have courage.
Yeah.
And that's what took us to how do we respond to this discouragement. If I don't have courage, what do I do?
Yeah.
And that's where we found the keys in my mind on how to respond to it the best.
And I love how you had set this up, because you did use the story of Nehemiah, and here he had went through all of this,
right?
Because he anytime there's this new idea and there's some momentum behind it, everybody's excited. It's easy to kind of get people to show up, and then real work starts, right? And they started getting tired. There was too much. They didn't think they could do it. And then on top of that, now you've got this outside influence coming in that adds to the fear, right? If without the outside influence, it's bad enough. It was already bad. And now you've got these guys coming in going, we're going to knock this down as soon as you get it up. It's not going to be built well. It's easy to push over, whatever. And so they had this other side of these people now coming in to say, this is going to be horrible. What are you doing? And this is now where we find Nehemiah trying to figure this out. Yeah. Like his whole thing now is to build this wall, right? His whole thing is to bring back the glory of Jerusalem. And he knows, I think he knows God has called him to do this.
That's it. He believed that was what God had for him.
And so he had to get to this point then of saying, well, how do I overcome discouragement, but how do I overcome discouragement and help everybody else? Because there was There was real situations here. This was real fear too. I mean, we're not talking about that. Oh, okay, it's
it wasn't just a fear of failure,
right? It was like these guys they're just as likely to kill you.
Yeah, right.
They're not just coming in to push the walls down. They're coming in to squash everything about this idea of putting this wall up. And if that means killing you in the process, then that means killing you.
Yes.
And so Nehemiah hits this point of saying, okay, how can I do what I know God has called me to do?
And I absolutely loved the visual in Scripture in Nehemiah 4 where he said, we prayed to our God. That was that first thing I talked about, that if you want to respond to discouragement, you need to be a praying person. And it just needs to be part of what you do. I've talked to people I've actually talked to people this week, and they're really excited about their devotion. They're really excited about their Bible reading. And I spoke to somebody yesterday, and they said, I'm reading my Bible. I've got 2 devotionals. I this, and this. And I still feel anxiety. And I said, but you haven't told me about your prayer life. Because it's the same thing as you can have the knowledge, but you've got to know how to do it. And so you can have all the knowledge of the Word, which if anybody knows me, I'm a Word person. I love the Bible. But man, you need to be calling out to God on a regular basis. And so what Nehemiah said is we prayed to our God and we posted a guard.
Yeah.
We prayed to our God and we posted a guard. And I really enjoyed the picture of that and explaining to people, you can pray and still prepare.
Yeah.
It's not a one or the other. You can pray and still be responsible for what you're responsible for.
And I think that too often, I know this was the case with myself as well, and I've tried to get better at this as I've gotten older and I've had other things happen, of too often prayer becomes the last thing.
Right. Last resort.
I mean, we'll go talk to everybody. We'll talk to our pet. We'll talk to, and in that moment, maybe we're complaining, maybe we're just getting it off our chest, maybe we're, whatever. And what I have found too often is if I'm not real careful about who I go talk to, they do nothing to help, and they actually make it worse.
Yeah, they pile on the discouragement.
It's like, oh, this is a trash heap. Let's throw some more trash on it. Let me show you some more problems that maybe you didn't already see in yourself yet.
Yep. And
so I have found myself saying, okay, I have to get away from people for a second, and I have to say, God. And sometimes that's me complaining to God. Sometimes it's me, like I'm trying to put it out there for real, like He doesn't see this. And there's more than once that I've kind of gotten to that, like, God, like this can't be it. Help me to see what you're seeing.
When was the last time, and this is not for you as much as it is for our listeners, when was the last time you just took some time? You were frustrated, you were discouraged, you've had a lot of failures, and instead of running to everybody else for their advice, you just went on a walk and talked to God.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of, just turning off the radio in your car, putting your phone away in the car, and just meditating on the Lord while you drive to wherever you're going.
Yeah.
I love the idea, and this has been covered so many times. I'm not bringing up anything new, but I really think that prayer closet in the New Testament was just get away.
Yeah.
Because it was very specific where he said, go into your closet and shut the door.
Yeah.
And I think there is something to this of just call out to God, make it offensive. Don't just be on the offense. God, what can I do? God, this is how I feel. All of those things I think are important, and I think it's important that we get it out.
Yeah.
Rather than just holding it in. And
that's what Nehemiah there in chapter 4, he said, hear us, our God, for we are despised. Like he was putting it out there. He was saying the emotion that he was feeling. He was saying the thing that he was seeing, because it's important for us to be honest and truthful with God. I think too often we go into our prayer time and we try to pretty it up too much, and we try, and it's like, God knows. He knows. He knows who I am. He knows my emotions. He knows the things I'm thinking. He knows. So I'm going to put it out there for him and go, God, this is what I'm feeling right now, and I don't like it.
Yep.
Now, sometimes the answer that comes back is suck it up.
Yep.
You know, and in fact, more often than not, probably it's suck it up. But it's putting it out there for real before God and crying out to God and saying, God, I need you.
Right.
And then while I'm sitting here saying, God, I need you, I'm also looking, saying, okay, God, what can I do today? What do I have control of?
Right.
And for Nehemiah, it was, we can put a guard.
Yeah. But it was also, and this is more often than not the answer, you can also do what you've already been called to do.
Yes.
You may not, whatever that big dream it is that you have, or whatever that big work is that you feel that God has given you, until it comes to fruition, you could just do what you've been called to do.
Yep.
In other words, for them, it was rebuild the wall.
Yeah.
And so they rebuilt the wall.
Right. I love that in verse 6. It says,
Yes.
So we rebuilt the wall.
That's it. We rebuilt the wall. What did y'all do, to overcome discouragement? We rebuilt the wall.
Yeah.
So that question comes, and I say this to a lot of people, and some people think it's a cop-out when they come to me and say, I just don't know what the Lord wants me to do. And usually my response is, well, what's in front of you? Mm-hmm. Are you a parent? God wants you to be a godly parent. There's something to do. And if you've never really done that, and when I say really done that, I am judging people. If you've never really been a godly parent, as fathers, you've never been the priest of your home, there's a good place to start. Mm-hmm. That's the work you've been called to do. That's the work you continue to do. You're praying for God to give you another job. Well, what are you doing with the one you have now? Mm-hmm. If you have a job right now, what are you doing with it? Do you deserve another job? It's the same thing. I think we talked about this not too long ago. Go out to look at my teenage daughter's car, and she's asking me for a different one, and I go out and look at it, and it's got trash everywhere. And I look at her and go, why would I give you something else? Yeah. You're not taking care of what you got.
There you go.
That is a really fun illustration in talking about teenagers. But what if we turned it on Brad?
Yep.
What if I turned it on me and said, God, why won't you blah, blah, blah? And God says, well, you're still not doing all this.
Yeah, how are you showing up?
Exactly.
And I think that's a huge element in parenting. You mentioned that of we're supposed to be godly parents. One of the things my wife and I have talked about is we try to be real in front of our kids with that. I'm having a bad day. I'm not saying I'm going to go home and just pout around the house. You got to suck it up sometimes, but we help our kids see real emotion. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, the situation I'm in right now, it may not be great.
Right.
Now, we don't leave it there, though.
Yeah.
We go, no, this isn't great, but God has a plan here. Yeah. I may not understand it yet. God's going to step in and do something. Until he does, we're going to keep showing up.
Yep. Take care of what's in front of you.
Keep doing what we know to do. And sometimes I'm going to keep doing what I know God called me to do last.
Yeah.
If God hasn't told me to do something else yet,
right,
then I'm going to do what God's called me to do last, realizing that what God's called me to do last might be the thing that he's wanting me to do still for another 10 years, 15 years. This may be the thing I retire doing.
Right.
But I can't just sit around and go, well, God, because I didn't get what I wanted, then I'm just going to quit. Forget it.
But I think that's the key, what I wanted rather than what God had for me. We think that what we want is what God's required or obligated to give us.
Yep.
And that is not anywhere close.
No.
We have forgotten what it was like to be a child in what I would call a godly parent's house, where I would tell my dad, this is what I want. My dad was like, that's cute. This is what you get. What I didn't know at the time is my dad wanted to give me everything I wanted.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't happening at the time. And so he gave me what I needed.
Yep.
There was never a time growing up I didn't get what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the way God works. And it's important for us to look and say, I may not feel that this is where God wants me to be long term, but this is still where he has me.
Yeah.
And I'm just simply going to do the very best that I can and know that God is faithful, because part of that continuing the work, part of that crying out to God is the next thing on the list, and just looking at what the big picture is.
Yeah.
Because the big picture matters in everything. The big picture matters.
And I think the challenge there is not something new. We've said it. This is episode 31. We've said it probably about 31 times now.
Yeah.
Is when we say what's the big picture, remember that when we're dealing with things that are spiritual, the big picture is that we make it to heaven.
Yep.
The big picture is that we take people with us.
Yes.
And so then I have to challenge myself to say, well, what am I doing today that will help others make it to heaven?
Right.
Because I'm going.
Yep.
We've talked about that.
Yep.
I'm going. So what am I doing today? Does God have me in the situation I'm in right now? Because there are still things that I'm needing to do. There are still people that I have influence over, or that I can speak to, or that I can show Christ. And if that is what I should be doing, that's the big picture.
Right.
And I get caught up in the job that I want to do, or the paycheck, or the vacation I would rather take than what I can afford, or whatever. And we lose sight of those things we feel like are the big picture. And in reality, the big picture is eternity. Right.
And I think that's the question we ask on a regular basis. That is part of that big picture thought. I guess for me, I can do this exercise for people that are listening. As long as I'm a husband, I have a calling. As long as I'm a father, I have a calling. And I could go through the whole thing. As long as I'm a brother, as long as I'm an uncle, I have a calling. And to me, and this is what Nehemiah pointed out, to me, that is the big picture.
Right.
If I get the next job, if I get the next promotion, if I get the next whatever, and I lose those people that are closest to me, have I really gotten anything that's worth anything? And is that, and that's the thing, is that what God has for my life? I like chasing stuff. I like chasing stuff. I like chasing the next promotion and the next thing. But I also have to be careful. I have to be careful not to leave behind the people that are chasing me, in my wife and my kids and now my grandkids. It's not hard for me to find the big picture in my life.
Right.
What's hard is staying focused on the big picture. And that is the thing that we always talk about is what's at stake.
Yeah.
That what's at stake if I fail. That's the thing.
When I read what Nehemiah says here, in my head, and we have actually you've used these clips because we have done some. Oh yeah, we've done. I know where
we're going. We didn't even talk about this ahead of time. Keep going, brother.
We've done some experiences, getaways, encounters, retreats, whatever you want to call them, and we've done some of these messages. And Nehemiah, when I read what he says here, I am picturing Braveheart.
Yeah. Mel Gibson with the blue face.
The blue face. Or I'm picturing the one you did. You used a clip. I can't remember what movie it's from now, but it's another one of those kind of, the army is standing here, the wall, the insurmountable army is on the other side, and you get that typically in a movie, it's the hero or the general or the whoever to come out. The
person that's making the most money.
That's right. Come out and excite everybody. But that Nehemiah, he says, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes.
That's it.
And it's like that.
That's a big picture.
Yeah. I'm getting excited reading those words of Nehemiah, and it's that reminding in those times. How do you overcome what seems to be insurmountable?
Yeah.
It's realizing your why. It's realizing, what is this thing I'm fighting for? Why am I going to that job every day?
Yeah.
Why am I getting up at the house? Why am I continuing to push past fatigue and frustration and failure and fear? And why am I continuing to say, this is worth fighting for? It's those things.
And that's the why.
Yeah.
And then the how is the next one, which is to rehearse. And I use this word on purpose. Rehearse the encouragement of God's promises.
Yeah.
Over and over and over. Building an environment of encouragement. We had a couple over at our house, I think it was Saturday, and they were doing the climbing wall thing, and the dad, he said, hey, you can make it, try again. You can make it, try again. And I think his daughter said something like, I don't think I can. He said, that's an attitude of discouragement. We're encouragers. And it was just really cute. And here it is, the big picture wasn't lost on me as I started thinking about they're rehearsing what they have heard. And they are rehearsing this idea of encouragement. And they're rehearsing this idea of, let's do it, we can do it. And, Galatians 6 says, don't get tired.
Right.
Because tired leads to discouragement.
Yeah.
He said, don't get weary in doing good, because you can reap if you don't give up. And there's
right.
that encouragement.
And I think it's a big part of we started this whole section of the podcast in saying you cry out to God, crying out to God, either prayer. You can do that through worship as well, that sort of thing, crying out to God. But it's not surprising to say one of the most important parts of the steps, when you're saying rehearse the encouragement of God's promise, that's also understanding that you have to take time to put God's promises in your life.
That's it.
You got to find some things, and that's God's word.
Yeah.
And if you're not putting God's word in there, you're missing a key element.
Right.
We've talked about that with you people saying, well, I pray God never speaks to me. And it's like, well, he's got a whole book he's put together.
He wrote several letters.
And there's a lot of good things in there.
Yeah.
You need to go digging. Mm-hmm. You need to spend some time. If I'm going to stand on the promises of God, I've got to figure out what those promises are. Yeah. And we forget how much of the Bible for a long time was oral tradition, passed down. What does that mean? That means somebody had to be saying it to somebody else.
Yep.
Hey, you need to know this. And even whenever they started writing, reading is actually something human history-wise, most people couldn't read. Like that. It's not most people read for centuries. Right. Most people couldn't read. Yeah. Until more recently does the average man even get to learn to read. Yep. And so to say, well, they started writing this stuff down, it was oral tradition. It was people saying, God did this. And I love so many times in the Old Testament where God actually commands, build an altar right here. So that when your kids and your grandkids, when generations later ask, or they walk by this, they will see this altar and they'll know God did something.
God did something here.
And how many times in our families do we not build an altar? Do we not say, God did something here? And my wife and I have been talking about that here recently. We've been on a faith journey. I've said this multiple times. And we said, we're going to build an altar here. And this is what we're going to do. Obviously, it wasn't an actual altar at the backyard. But we're going to build an altar. And this is what we're going to do. So that 10, 15, 20 years down the road, we may not have this fresh in our minds anymore, but there's going to be a physical representation that when people say, hey, what is that? We can remind them what God did.
It's no surprise that in the world we live in today, that there's more discouragement than courage, because we are very good at focusing on the failures rather than celebrating the wins.
Yeah.
We don't build altars anymore. We don't journal anymore. We don't remember all the good things God has done. I'm a big proponent. I've said this, and I think some people think that I'm just saying it for whatever, but I'm a big proponent of writing down the promises of God and putting them in places where I see them. My daughter talks about she has a scripture on the wall.
Yeah.
There wasn't a place for it. She made a place for the wall beside the door that goes out to their garage, and it's the promise that she is standing on.
Yeah.
And I'm a proponent of that. I tell people all the time, go buy you a cheap set of 3x5 notebook cards and write down.
Yeah.
Write down one on 4 or 5 of them and put them everywhere.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine that wrote it down and stuck it in the bill of his hat. And he said, every time I took my hat off, that thing would fall out and I'd have to look at it.
Yeah.
And I'm a big proponent of that, because it causes us to rehearse those promises of God over and over and over. And from that, I also believe in sowing and reaping.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one of the greatest values we can add to being encouraged and having more courage is to carry somebody else's burden.
Mm-hmm.
That picture in Nehemiah is beautiful. We talk about it a lot, that, they had a trowel in one hand, a sword in the other. That was not for them necessarily to protect themselves, but that was to protect the person beside of them.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we, find a way. If you're lonely, be somebody's friend.
Yeah.
If you're discouraged, encourage somebody else. If you feel like it's been a long time since somebody reached out to you, reach out to them. And find a way to carry other people's burdens.
And I know we've talked about this before as well, but I think that's why you have to find a group of people that you can live life with. And you can call it whatever you want to call it. You can call it the gathering at the ballpark. You can call it a life group. You can call it a small group. You can call it a people come around and sit in the living room. Whatever you want to call it. But you've got to have some people that you're, if nothing else, that you're checking on.
Community. You
got to have community. And I think that's one of the things that as far as saying, how is the enemy attacking the church today? He's convincing the church that they don't need community. He's convincing the church that they have too much time. They have too many things going on. They don't have enough time. They don't have, they got this and they're going here and they got this thing going on over there. And all of that is good reason for you not to go to whatever it is.
Right.
And when you don't prioritize community, then you don't have it.
Yep. And when you don't have it, you end up alone.
Yes.
That's the whole point. You end up alone, and it's hard to carry somebody else's burden when you're not around anybody else.
Right. Because when you're helping someone else, you're teaching some things about yourself. And you're allowing also your testimony in that moment. It's during those times when somebody goes, man, can you guys pray right now? This is going on in my life, or this is going on with my kids, or this is going on at the job. And somebody else in the group is able to say, not only am I going to pray for you on this, let me tell you about a time that, this happened with my kid, or this happened at my job. And this is how it turned out. This is what happened, or this is what I did that I shouldn't have done. And this is what I did that worked. And it's during those moments we're able to literally reach out and carry someone else's burden in that moment and say, I am going to pray for you on this, and then actually pray. Yeah. Crazy idea. So you mean actually call out to God for it? Actually call out to God. Okay. Don't just text them the praying hands. That's right. Okay. And don't say in the moment, I'm going to pray for you, and then you never think about it again. But actually, if you're going to really carry somebody else's burden, and the Bible talks about that reaping and sowing, because guess what? There's going to be a time that you're going to need somebody to come along beside you and help carry your burden. And what I think we have to get past is your issues aren't unique. Right. You can find somebody that is carrying the same burden that you feel like you can't carry anymore. And if you'll help them, it will help you.
And even if not in the moment, and this is what I want people to understand. If I'm helping you carry a burden, I may not immediately be encouraged, but if the Bible is true, then with me sowing into whatever it is that's going on in your life and helping you at just the right time, according to Scripture, at just the right time, I will reap also. And so that's why it's important. Look for it. I've said this, look for work.
Yeah.
In discouragement, look for work. Look for somebody. How can I encourage? Let me find somebody else that's discouraged, and instead of crawling down the ditch with them and us just sharing horror stories, what if I'm the one that stands up and says, hey, let me help you out of there.
Yeah.
Let me help you out of there. And I believe God honors that. And when you feel like you're getting a little too deep in the ditch, there's somebody else going to come on the top and say, hey, let me help you out of there.
Right. And I think this idea of battling discouragement, calling it for what it is, I think is so important. It's so important that Jesus talks about it as well.
Yep.
So it's kind of one of those, like we talk about, over in James, where it says, when you have problems, discouragement is kind of a when you are discouraged.
Yeah.
And Jesus in Matthew 11 says, come to me all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. What did we start talking about with discouragement?
Exactly.
One of those first things, fatigue. God is saying, come to me and I'll give you rest. And part of that then is, as we're going through that moment, it's living that out and realizing that other people need to see us living it out, and other people need to see us pointing to Jesus saying, hey, this is how you do it. Go to Jesus and he will give you rest.
That's it. That's good.
Thanks for listening to Living Out 180. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and share it with someone so they can enjoy it too. Learn more or join us at 180churchtn.com. We hope you have a wonderful day.